Welcome back, everyone. So this crazy hobby we're all in of high-end audio or hi-fi audio or just building a stereo system, what is the goal of what is our goal when we build these systems? For me, it's about listening to music that has life, breath, blood, sweat, and tears in it. It's about that emotion, the way we can connect with that music, right? It can connect with our heart and soul. It's no secret that all of us, all over the globe, every person on the globe can connect with music. It makes us sway, it makes us feel different emotions, it can make us feel happy, it can make us feel sad. I love hearing my music being played back in a way that is extremely, supremely musical, with a little bit of those magic ingredients that we all strive for. And today I want to talk about a product that I've had here for the last few weeks. And when it first came in, I wasn't sure about it, but slowly but surely, this thing has grown on me and attached itself to my heart. And even though I have some amazing amplification here in the form of Passlab separates, in the form of the Luxman 595 ASC, and other amps and integrateds that I have around here, this Michi X3 has attached itself to my heart and my soul, and I just can't disconnect it from the system. So today I want to tell you guys my thoughts on the Michi X3 made by ROTEL. This is probably my favorite product that I've listened to in 2022. So this will be one of my best of 2022 videos, and it's the Michi X3 integrated amp. Let's talk about it. So one day I was on this YouTube channel looking at comments, and a couple of you asked if I could review the Michi line from ROTEL. And lo and behold, a day later, I get an email from the music room, tmraudio.com, asking me if I would like to take a look at the Michi X3. Now, the guys at Music Room are awesome. Music Room sells used gear that they vet, they photograph, they test, and they are dealers for new gear. One of those brands is the Michi line made by ROTEL. Now, I have a little bit of a history with ROTEL. I'd say maybe sometime in the 90s, and I bought a ROTEL integrated amplifier and a ROTEL CD player. And I just had an inexpensive little system in one of my rooms. And the ROTEL gear has always been huge bang for the buck, right? It looks nice, it's very affordable, and it sounds decent. I was never captivated by the ROTEL sound. I always thought it sounded really good for the money, but it just didn't have enough guts, right? It didn't have enough beef. It didn't have enough meat in those mids that I like. But fast forward, sometime in the 90s, ROTEL, before we fast forward, sometime in the 90s, ROTEL created a line called Michi, M-I-C-H-I. And it was meant to stand apart from their affordable offerings. It was meant to be more of an audiophile choice, something higher end, something that sounds better, is made better, looks better. And for some reason, in the 90s, this line did not take off for ROTEL, and it vanished, from what I understand, almost as quickly as it appeared. Back then, I wasn't aware of the Michi line, but a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago now, 2.5 years ago, ROTEL brought back the Michi line. This is not a new integrated amp. It's been out for a couple of years. And, you know, when it first came out, I saw it and I thought it looked really sleek, really modern. And I said, if I can ever get one of these sent to me, I'll happily take a listen to it. Well, here we are, fast forwarded. I received an X3 from the Music Room to evaluate. This was their store demo model, so it's already burned in. And man, when it came in, this thing comes in a massive box. Now, this amp is wide and it's deep. It's about 2-3 inches wider than my Luxman, as well as deeper. This is a big boy, but it's also pretty slim. It has a slim profile. When I took it out of the box, I examined the amp and I admired the beautiful looks of the Michi X3. It has a black glass front plate that looks rather striking, but you want to be careful putting your paws on it because you'll get all kinds of fingerprints on it. The front only has two dials. You have your source selector knob and you have your volume knob. It also has a headphone output and a power button. Yes, the X3 does have a headphone output, and I did test it with some pretty cool headphones. The Virum Audio Virum 1 planar magnetic headphones, which are not an easy drive. These are gorgeous headphones. They come from Ukraine. They're made in Ukraine, and they're like 350 bucks. They look astounding, and they sound really, really good with the Michi X3 headphone output. It's not driving them to their full potential, but man, they sound very musical and sweet. So the Michi right off the gate on the front panel alone has this simplicity, a modern look that I really was starting to dig. I was looking around for imperfections, I saw none. I then flipped it around to the back, but for the back and all the inputs and outputs, let's get closer up to the X3 and take a look at the details of the rear panel. All right, so here's the rear of the Michi X3. Right here you have your phono input, which if you're using the internal moving magnet phono stage, that's where you want to plug in your record player. You want to plug or twist your ground cable onto there to eliminate any buzzing or noise. Moving over, you have three RCA inputs here. You have CD, tuner, and auxiliary. The cool thing is in the setup menu, you can change these names to whatever you want. For example, I changed CD to stream. I changed tuner to records because I'm using an external phono stage from past labs with my moving coil cartridge. So you have three RCA inputs. Here you have mono subwoofer outputs right here. So if you just want to plug in a subwoofer, easy connection. You have a preamp out here. So if you want to change amplifiers, for example, use the X3 as a preamp, you can hook up an amplifier right there. It doesn't have a balanced out for that. It's just RCA, but you can add an amplifier. This has also balanced inputs right here. One set of balanced inputs, and pretty cool, you have a Bluetooth module here. This actually comes ready to roll out of the box where you can stream Bluetooth right to the X3. Not the ultimate in sound quality, but if you don't have a streamer yet, you can just stream right through the Bluetooth. You also have your digital inputs here if you want to hook up a streamer to your DAC. So you have your optical ins. There's three optical inputs. You have three coax inputs. There's a network Ethernet input here, but that's not because this has a streamer built in. It does not. This is for system updates. And of course, you have your USB input. You have your big power button on the back here, and the speaker connections might fool you. It looks like it's set up for two sets of speakers, but this is so you can bi-wire your speakers very easily, right? So to hook up a standard set of speakers to the X3, you will put your positive here, your negative here of your left speaker. Your right speaker, you will put your negative here and your positive right here. Of course, you have your power cable input. So the Michi X3, once I looked at it, once I felt its heft and placed it in the system, I realized this $5,200 integrated amp looks and feels like something in the $10,000, $12,000 range. Now the Michi X3 has a lot of power inside of its box. It has a 200 watt per channel, continuous watt per channel, Class AB amp, and it can reach peaks of 350 watts per channel. So this is no lightweight. It's not a Class D amp. It houses a Class AB amp, and that's really cool. It has a huge toroidal transformer inside of it, which is encased in epoxy. And I love when manufacturers do this because that keeps the amp dead silent. You're not going to hear any buzzing, any humming, any noises coming from the Michi X3. This is one of the most quiet and silent amplifiers I've ever plugged in this room. Next to the HiFi Rose RA180, that was also dead silent. But the Michi X3 has this fit and finish to it that's pretty sublime. It's pretty slick, it's pretty modern, and it looks really, really nice on my cabinet. So I've been listening to my Luxman 595 ASC a lot, and I've really Love the sound of the Luxman. It's big, it's three-dimensional, it's very detailed and crisp. There's nothing gooey or warm or bloated about the Luxman sound. In fact, it's way more detailed and transparent than even the 590 AX2, right, that preceded it. This Luxman is a very audiophile kind of piece. When I took the Luxman out, it was around 9 o'clock at night, and Debbie came in. We listen to music 4 or 5 nights a week now. It's awesome to be able to listen to music with your significant other, and she enjoys it just as much as I do. She's getting into these pieces, and she's starting to hear the differences between amps and DACs and other things I put in the system, right? So it was around 9 o'clock. I put the Michi in. I took out the Luxman, and right before that, we were listening to the Luxman for about a half an hour. The Michi goes in, I play the same playlist, and immediately we both notice the difference in the sound. So let's talk about the sound of the X3. Now I'm running my Fleetwood DeVille SQ speakers. I'm running a DCS Lena DAC and clock, and I have a Luxman PD151 turntable with a Past Labs XP, I think I'm using an XP15 right now for the phono preamp. And I'm using all Nordist Red Dawn cabling. So we plug in the X3 and instantly we notice the sound is a little more relaxed, a little more laid back, a little bit warmer, but yet even more of a wider sound stage. I noticed the imaging of the X3 is not as precise and cut out as the Luxman, but it's more of a natural, organic type of imaging. That's not analytical or sterile, right? It's just a beautiful rendering of the music. Now, there is some three-dimensionality. There's a little bit of a holographic nature to the soundstage if it's in the music, right? If you play some good recordings, you're going to hear a wide, rich, deep, warm-leaning, very extremely musical sound presentation with just the right amount of details. Now, this is not a forward amp. It's more of a middle of the road, a little laid back, but very luscious and beautiful. And as I said, supremely musical. So right off the bat, we noticed the difference. And at first I was like, I don't know if I like it. It sounds a little bit too laid back, but I was used to the Luxman sound, which is more forward. So Debbie liked the sound. She noticed it was warmer and laid back. She said the vocals were a little fuller with the X3, and I agreed. I'd say they're a little bit nicer in my system than even the Luxman. They're warmer, they're a little bigger, and they come out a little more into the room. I love when that happens because then it seems like the artist is in the room with you. And if you turn out the lights, right, and you close your eyes even, you can envision them in front of you singing the song. In fact, it reminded me a little bit of a Hagel. I think it was a 390 that I auditioned once a couple of years ago. I wasn't a big fan of the looks of the Hagel, but it sounded phenomenal, and it had a almost similar kind of sound, but I feel actually that the X3 is a little smoother, right? A little more expansive and a little just sweeter. That's from memory, so don't take that as gospel, but I was really digging what the X3 was doing. And some will ask, well, why are you even comparing it against an amp, the Luxman, that's more than double the cost? The Luxman is a $12,500 integrated amp. X3 is a $5,300 amp. So quite the difference in price, but I have to tell you, is in regards to build and looks and feel, they look totally different, but the X3 in no way feels inferior. It doesn't feel cheaper. So that first bit of listening, that first hour, I was using my DCS Lena DAC and clock. That's my reference DAC. Now this is a very expensive DAC and clock, and this amp, the X3, really should be reviewed using the internal DAC because that's how most people will use it. So I first started with the DAC. Now I'm spoiled. I've reviewed and auditioned and tested maybe a dozen DACs over the last 2 years, and these DACs are in the high-end category. The DCS, right? The Cord Dave, the Weiss 501, the Dana Frips Terminator Plus 12th anniversary, among many others. So I'm very spoiled when it comes to digital front end. I'm spoiled by these DACs that provide smooth, beautiful, wide open organic sounds. So when I went to the internal DAC of the Michi, when I first started playing music, my first thought was, well, it's a little harder sounding, it's a little more tipped up in the treble, and it's a little thinner sounding than my reference. But what the heck, it should be. I'm using a $20,000 digital front end. So if I take the DAC inside of the Michi and think about it compared to some other DACs that are around the 1,000 or 2,000 range, then it compares favorably to those. I would say the DAC inside of the X3 is about comparable to a $1,500 DAC. The sound was expansive. It had a nice sound stage. It was detailed, very highly detailed actually, and it provided beautiful music. It just wasn't as refined as what I'm used to. Now, I read someone else who thoughts on a forum who bought an X3, and they said that the DAC inside of the X3 bested their Mitek Brooklyn. So that's a pretty nice DAC. So the DAC inside of the X3, from people who've used it, some people have loved it. Some people said it bested their external DAC, and others like me thought it was a little lacking. But usually with built-in DACs, you're not going to get a $10,000, $20,000 DAC performance on a built-in. The cool thing is you can add an external DAC anytime you want to, or you can live happily ever after with the built-in DAC because it does make really nice music. Now I moved over to the built-in phono stage, which is a moving magnet only. So I took my Luxman PD151, I took off the head shell that has the Luxman moving coil cartridge, and I put on a head shell with an Ortofon Blue. Now the Blue is sort of a budget cartridge, but it sounds pretty dang good. I've owned a Blue for many, many years, and that is a basic, inexpensive, in the grand scheme of things, moving magnet cartridge that just sounds really good. It punches above its weight. And I found the internal phono stage of the X3 to be just as good, if not even a little beefier than the one in the Luxman. And the Luxman has a really nice internal phono stage. So if you're going to play records and you have a moving magnet cartridge, just plug it right into the back of the Michi and you're going to be fully happy with the sound you're getting. That's my guess. And that's the beauty of the X3. You buy the X3 because you have a DAC built in, you have a phono stage built in. If you move up to the Michi X5, which is the larger integrated, I think it puts out like 600 watts per channel or something, it has a moving coil phono stage built in as well. It has two of the big transformers. It doubles up on those. I have not heard the X5, but it's something like 105 pounds. So that's a beast. I believe the X3 is under 70 pounds. It's in the 60-pound range, 65, 68. So it's more manageable. If you're looking for an integrated amplifier that has everything in one box that you need, that doesn't sacrifice on sound, that is dead quiet as a mouse, right? You don't hear any noise from it. Has the power to power almost anything you want to put in your room. And remember, when we listen in a home situation, most of us are listening to 10, 15 watts at most. Most of us don't need these crazy high power watts, but when we have high power, it brings us headroom. So if we ever do need it for those peaks, if we're listening loud, that headroom will always be there, and it will ensure our speakers do not get damaged as long as your speakers can handle that wattage. Now let's compare it to some other amps I've recently talked about. What about the name SuperNate 3, which is in line with the price of the Michi? I loved the SuperNate 3. If you saw my video, I raved about it and I said, I'm buying this amp. It just made these speakers sing, right? But I found a problem with the SuperNate 3 before I bought it, before I paid for it, and I plugged in my Cardus clear reflection speaker cables into my Klipsch speakers, and it was just static and noise. And I found out the name is not really compatible with all speaker cables, and they recommend you buy their special speaker cables, which is fine if it's going to improve the performance. But I wasn't into buying another set of cables because I have a couple of really nice sets. So I sent the SuperNate 3 back to the music room with hesitation because I loved the sound, right? It was the most dynamic kicking sound I've heard from the Fleetwood DeVilles. But now we come to the X3, right? The X3, I believe, after listening to it for several weeks, is, for my tastes, a little more beautiful than the Super Nate. It doesn't have that drum kick that I love so much, but it has an overall sweeter, more relaxed sound. The treble's a little smoother on the X3, right? So compared to the HiFi Rose RA180. Now that was an amp I really liked as well. It had a dynamic forward, alive sound signature. And while it was a Class D amp, it had new technology to make it sound more like a Class AB. But the HiFi Rose was a little more forward into the room, and it had a little bit of a sheen on it that most people won't notice. But if you compare a lot of amps, that's when you'll notice it compared to the X3. The X3 was also a little more fluid and warmer, right? I believe the RA180 was more holographic in the presentation than the X3. But again, the X3, what it has about it is that supreme musicality, and it's not dull. A lot of people associate musical with dull or boring or too warm, and that's not the case at all with the X3. Again, as I said, it balances that line between detail, imaging, and warmth. It's really a special amp. So for me, the Michi line by ROTEL, this is a great first start. I hope to hear the X5 soon to compare it, or even the separates, which would be amazing. And I want to thank, again, the Music Room, tmraudio.com. If it wasn't for them, this review would not be here. It wouldn't be on YouTube right now. So thanks to them for sending me the unit for evaluation. They're a great shop. I highly recommend going to tmraudio.com and checking out their fresh arrivals page, because they get anywhere between 10 and 20 new things a day in the used section. It's pretty amazing. And there's times I'm looking at the used and I'm like, oh, I've been waiting for one of these. And then I'm like, oh, I'm broke. I can't afford it. And I just shut off the computer. But if you're looking for high-end audio at a fraction of what it costs new, keep an eye on tmraudio.com. They have some amazing gear that arrives each and every day. And they also sell the Michi line, right? This X3 came from them. So sadly, I have to send it back. I'm not going to be able to buy it as much as I love it, but I can highly recommend this. This is the favorite integrated amp, the favorite overall piece I've had in here for 2022 when it comes to value, what you get for the money, and the way that it is so dang musical and pleasing to listen to. So I hope you enjoyed this review of the Michi X3, and I will have a new review and more videos coming very soon. Thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.